continuing our learning of Sefer Shoftim, and we are presently up to Perek Yutes, chapter 19. And as I indicated last time, the last Shofet chronologically that is discussed in the book of Shoftim is Shimshon. And after Shimshon, there are two other stories that are actually from a much earlier period, at the very beginning of the Tekufat HaShoftim, 300 years earlier. The first is the story of the idol of Micha, the Avodah Zarah that remained in the tribe of Dan for a very long time. And the second is the very, very sad and tragic story of Pilegesh Begiva, the concubine, in Giva, a town in the territory of Binyamin, and that is the narrative we're going to be looking at today. Again, although it is at the very end of the book of Shoftim, it in fact occurred 300 years, more than 300 years earlier at the very beginning of the Sefer. And Shmuel Hanavi, the author of Sefer Shoftim, introduces this story with a refrain that appears quite often, Vayhi b'yamim mohem, behold, it was in those days, Umelech ein b'Yisrael, there was no melech, there was no central authority. And that kind of explains what is going to be unfolding as we look at this sad story. And the story begins, V'hi ish Levi gor b'yarkasei har Ephraim. Behold, there was a Levi, and Levium, of course, did not have their own territory, so they had cities that were scattered throughout the tribes of Am Yisrael, and he dwelt in the mountain country of Ephraim. Vayikach lo isha pilegesh mi beis lechem Yehuda. And he took as a concubine, not as a regular wife, a woman from the city of Beis Lechem, which is the same place as modern Beis Lechem, which was in the territory of Yehuda. Vatisna olav pilagshe. And his pilegesh, now vatisna often means committed adultery, but the Rishonim understands that this does not mean she committed adultery. This simply means that she turned away against him. She got into a fight with him. She got into a fight with him, and she left the house. In fact, the Gemara in Gittin basically uses this story as an example of the tragic things that can happen when a husband creates an atmosphere in the home of Ema Yisera, excessive fear. Basically, he got angry at her for various things, and she ran away. Vatelech mi'ito el beis avia. She left her husband, and she ran back to her father, El Beis Lechem Yehuda, in the city of Beis Lechem, in the tribe of Yehuda. Vaytehi sham yamim arba chadashim. And she remained in her father's home, away from her husband, for 4 months. Vayakam isha. And her husband eventually wanted to retrieve her, make things good. Vayelech acharer l'daber aliba l'hashiva. He wanted to convince her to come back. V'naro imo, he took his servant with him. V'tzemed chamorim, together with a pair of donkeys. It's not clear why they needed a pair of donkeys. Perhaps they were carrying loads of gifts, or perhaps one was a donkey for him, and one was a donkey for his nar. V'tiviyeu beis avia, and they came to her father's house. V'yireyu avi hanaira. And when the father of the young woman saw his son-in-law, actually it's not officially his son-in-law because she was a pilegesh, but when he saw the man she was living with come back to claim her, vayismach likraso, he's very happy to see him. Maybe he was tired of having his daughter stay in his house that long, and maybe he was happy that there could be shalom bayis, and there could be a reconciliation. Vayichazek bo chosno avi anaira. And the father-in-law, actually he's called the father-in-law, the father of this young woman, grabbed him, vayeshavito shloshes yomim, and they dwelt together for 3 days, vayoichlu vayishtu vayolinu sham, and they ate together and they drank together, and he was sleeping there. So 3 whole days. Vayhi bayom haravi, and it was on the 4th day, v'yashkimu baboker. So the man and his nar, the Levi and the nar, got up early to go on the road. Vayakam lolechet, they wanted to go. Vayomer avi hanaira el chasano, and the father of the naira says to his son-in-law, he wants to keep him around a little longer. Sa'ad libcha pas lechem. Why don't you have a meal, eat a good breakfast? V'yachar teleichu, and then you can go. Vayeshvu vayechlu shneim yachtav. So the Levi and his father-in-law ate a big meal together, vayishtu, and they drank wine. And at that point already, it's getting later in the day. So the father-in-law says, listen, don't leave in the late afternoon. You'll be stuck at night in dangerous places. Stay another night. Vayomer avi anayre eloish hayilna v'lin v'yitav libecha. Stay another night and you will be happy. Vayokam wish lalechas, but the man wanted to leave on the fourth day. Vayifzer bo chosno vayosha v'yolin. But the father-in-law was very insistent, so he agreed to stay. Vayashkem baboker b'yom hachamishi lalechas. And now he gets up the morning of the fifth day. He wants to go home with, of course, his pilegesh. Vayomer avi hanayra sadna levavcha, the same business. Eat something, vismamo ad natai sayim. And you can stay until, as the day progresses, vayechlu shneim. But at this point, vayokam oish lalechas, so now the guy gets up, hu pilaksho v'naro, he and his concubine, and his male servant. Vayomer lo chosno, on the fifth day, avi anayra, hine na refa hayom la'arev, behold, it's already past noon, the sun is moving towards the west, and it'll be setting pretty soon. Linu na hine chanei sayim. Stay overnight, because the day is ending. Lin po, vayitav levavecha, and your heart will be satisfied. V'ishkamtem machor, and you'll go tomorrow. L'darkachem. But at this point, the man was not going to give in, and on that fifth day, even though it was already in the afternoon, when the sun is in the direction of the west and going to set pretty soon, the man refused to stay another night. Vayakam vayelech, and he went, his nar, and his pilegesh. Vayavai ad noichach yevus. Now remember, Beis Lechem Yehuda is south of Yerushalayim. So as they're traveling, they come to the area of Yerushalayim that was still occupied by the Yevusi. Until David HaMelech's time, there were still Yevusim in Yerushalayim. V'imay tzemet chamarim chavushim. He had a pair of donkeys that were saddled. Pilagsho imo, and his pilegesh is with him. And behold, it's going to be nightfall, and you can't really travel at night. It's very dangerous. There are criminals. There are wild animals. So, Haim im Yevus, they arrived near the territory of the Yevusi, which is Yerushalayim. V'hayayim rod ma'od, and the sun is going down. Vayomer hanar el adonav, so the servant says to his master, L'cha na v'nasura, let us go and turn for lodging, el ir hayavusi hazos. He said, let us go into the city of the Yevusim, even the Goyim, and they will give us hospitality. V'nolin ba. Vayomer elav adonav, and this is indeed a very smart answer, Lo nasur el ir nachri, Asher lo mibnei Yisrael heina. We will not seek lodging in a city that is controlled by the Gentiles, who are not Yidden. They may kill us there. V'avarnu ad Giva. Let's keep going north past Yerushalayim till we reach the territory of Binyamin, where the closest major city to Yerushalayim was a place called Giva. This is north of Yerushalayim. So they're going from Beis Lechem, Yehuda, south. They pass the city of Yevusi, which is Yerushalayim, and he says he wants to go to Giva. Vayomer lenaro, he says to his young servant, L'cha v'nikrava biachad ha'mekomot, we will go and dwell in one of the Binyaminite cities. V'linu ba'giva, we will lodge either in Giva or Ramah, which was adjacent to it. V'yavru v'yelechu, and they went and they were traveling. V'atovo lehem hashemesh etzel hagiva asher leBinyamin, And when the sun sets, so that already means the end of traveling, they are passing the town of Giva, which is the town of Binyamin, north of Yerushalayim. So now it's a Yiddish city, a Jewish city, so they figured there would be Hachnasas Orchim, there would be safety, there would be hospitality, etc. V'yasuru sham lavo lalun b'giva, and they turned in order to sleep, spend the night in the town of Giva. Vayavai vayeshev b'rechai fa'ir, and behold, nobody offered them lodging, nobody offered them hospitality. They literally had to set up shop in the middle of the street. Ein ish ma'asef osam habaisa lalun. Nobody offered to give them lodging. V'hinei, and as they are basically getting ready to sleep in the middle of the street, ish zakein ba min maseo min asada, a man was entering the city. It was already nightfall, and he was coming back from the field. Apparently his field was a distance from the city, so he was returning at night. Bo'erev. And interestingly enough, it was a landsman, even though he's working in the tribe of Binyamin, ha'ishmei ha'Ephraim. Now remember, the husband of the concubine is a Levi who lives in Har Ephraim, and this is a man from Shevet Ephraim, v'hu gor begiva, and he was living in Giva, even though Anshei HaMakom B'nei Yemini, even though the people of Giva are from the tribe of Binyamin. Vayisa einav, and as he enters the city at night, and normally the streets are pretty deserted, he lifts up his eyes. Vayares ha'ish ha'oreach b'rechai fa'ir. He sees a man with his nar and pilegesh in the middle of the street. Vayomer ha'ish hazaken, and the old man says to the Levi, Ana telech, where are you going? Ume'ayin tavo, and where do you come from? Vayomer elav, and the Levi said, Ovrim anachnu mi Beis Lechem Yehuda ad Yarkesei Har Ephraim. I am traveling from Beis Lechem Yehuda, south, and I'm going north until the mountains or the hills of Ephraim, and Misham Anochi, and that is where I came from. I live in the mountainous area of Ephraim. Va'elech ad Beis Lechem Yehuda, and I went all the way to Beis Lechem Yehuda. He doesn't say why exactly, but it was to retrieve his pilegesh. And then he says, Es Beis Hashem ani holech. I am going to the temple of Hashem. Again, this is a little enigmatic, but it seems to be that this is a reference to the Mishkan of Shiloh, which in fact is located in Har Ephraim. So it's not really clear what he means here, because really he's going home, but perhaps he wants to make a good impression on the person who's going to offer him some type of hospitality. And he says, oh, by the way, when I go home, I will stop off in the Mishkan to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then he complains. So I'm on this trip from Beis Lechem to Har Ephraim, and I stopped in Giva for the night. V'ein ish ma'asef osi habaisa. And no one is taking me in to give me hospitality. And I'm a very low-maintenance guest. Gam teven, gam mispo, yesh lecha merenu. I have straw and fodder to give to our donkeys. They don't have to feed my animals. V'gam lechem b'yayin, yesh li. And I also have bread and wine. They don't even have to feed me. V'la mosecha, and to your maidservant, again, the pilegesh, ulanar, im avadecha, ein machsor kol dovar. We're not missing a thing. We can feed our animals, we can feed ourselves. All we need is a roof over our heads. Vayayimer ha'ish hazaken. And the elderly man from Har Ephraim, who now lives in Giva, said, Shalom lach. You should have shalom. Rak kol machsorcha alai. Let me take care of your needs. Rak barachov al tolin. But please do not sleep in the street. Let me take you home. Vayiviyeyu lebeso, and he brought them to his home. Vayaval lechamayrim, and he took care of the donkeys. Vayirchatzu raglayim, and their feet were washed from the dust. Vayoichlu, vayishtu, they ate and they drank. And as Baruch Hashem, this zaken, this zaken showed them hachnasas orchim. Hema meitivim eslibam, as they were enjoying themselves. V'hinei anshe yo'ir, anshe b'nei Belial nasavu alabayis. People from the city, now again, this was only a small group of the city. B'nei Belial, people of evil disposition. Belial means cruel, and it also means Belial, without the yoke of heaven on them. Nasavu alabayis, they surrounded the house. Mistapkim aladelis, they were knocking at the door. Vayomer alo ish balabayis azakein lemor, and they said to the balabayis azakein, Hotzi esoish asher bo'al beischa, bring out the man that you took into your house. V'nei da'enu, that we may know him. This is basically homosexual abuse. Again, the parallel to Sodom is virtually exact. If you remember in the Chumash, when the two Malachim came to Sodom and Lot offered them hospitality when originally they were going to lodge in the street. When Lot brought them in, people surrounded the house. And they said, bring out your guests so we may know them, which is really homosexuality. And look at what the Balabayas says, which is mamish, what Lot said. It's mamish a parallel. Vayetze aleim ho'ish Balabayas, and the Balabayas came out, Vayomer aleim al achai al tarehu, do not do an evil thing. No, acharesh rabah ba'esh hazeh obesi, this man came to my house for hospitality. Al tasu es an avala hazos, do not do this disgusting thing. Hine, biti habasula, again, mamish like Lot. I have a daughter that is a virgin. But in addition, he volunteers the pilegesh. So he doesn't want the man to come out, but he says, I'm perfectly happy to give you my daughter and the pilegesh. You see how crum. I mean, this man is the righteous man in this character, in this story. And look at the rishus, or the lack of seichel. I will give you my daughter, and I will give you his pilegesh. Otsiyana osam, I will bring them out. Va'anu osam, and you may afflict them. V'yasu lahem atay b'einechem, and do whatever you want to them. V'lo ish hazeh lo tasu davar hanaval azos. But please, 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 do not hurt my guest and do this disgusting thing. V'lo avu ha'anashim l'shmay alai. But these thugs did not want to listen to the man. V'yechazeh ka'ish b'pilacha. So now the other man, the Levi, took charge, and Baruch Hashem for the daughter was spared, but the Levi took his pilegesh and threw her out of the house. V'yaisi aleim achutz. Again, I mean, every single part of this story is a shanda and a busha and a cherpa. And what happened was, vayedu osa, she was essentially raped by a bunch of people. Vayis'alaluba, and they abused her. Kol halayla ad habayker, this pilegesh. Vayishalchuha ka'alais hashachar. And in the dawn, after a whole night of abuse and gang rape, they sent her home with the breaking of the dawn. Vatavai ha'isha lifnei habayker. And as the breaking of the morning came, the woman arrived back in the house of the Zaken, and she collapsed. She was so weakened. Vatipo Pesach Beisoish Asher Adonai Hashem, and she collapsed at the threshold of the house that her master was living in, Ad Ha'or, and she remained lying down in a fainting position until the sun came out. Vayakam Adonai Baboker. Her master gets up in the morning, ready to leave. Vayiftach dalsos abayis. He opens up the door. Vayetziv alechas tedarko, and he's going to go take his trip. V'hinei oisha pilagsho nofeles pesach abayis. And behold, this woman is falling at the threshold of the house. Yodea al hasaf. and her arms are outstretched on the threshold, like as if she's trying to crawl in, and she collapsed. Again, this is frankly unbelievable. Vayomer Eleha. And the man thinks she's just sleeping, and the man says to her, Kumi, get up. V'nelcha, it's time to go. V'eino neh. But nobody answered. The woman is dead. Vayikocha al chamor, he takes her corpse on the body. Vayakam ha'ish, and the man goes vayelech lemekomo, and he returns to Har Ephraim. Vayavo el beiso, he returns to his house. Vayikach es hamachelet, he takes a knife. Vayichazek bepilaksho, he grabs her body. Vayinatzcheha liatzameha, he cuts it up into pieces. Nivel hameis mamish, l'shnei mosar nesachim, 12 pieces. Vayishalcheha, and he sends it. I don't know what type of mail service they had, but he sent a piece of her body to every tribe of Am Yisrael. Now, obviously, he was not including, well, it's a machlokas. Was he including Binyamin? Because he wanted Binyamin also to exact justice? Or he didn't include Binyamin, but he included Shevet Levi. But either way, he sent a piece to every tribe, Vahaya, as if to tell them, look at what has happened. This woman was murdered brutally and raped. Vahaya, kol haraya v'amar, anyone that saw this and became aware of the story said, Lo niyasa v'lo nirasa kazois l'miyom alos b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim ad hayom hazeh. There is nothing as horrendous as this that has happened from the day that we left Mitzrayim and became a nation until now. This is the worst. Look at what happened. Simu lachem Allah utzu v'daberu. We must think about what to do and seek counsel, how to respond to this tremendous desecration. Okay, so this is the initial background of the story of Pilegesh Begiva, and then in the next parak we will discuss what the response of Klal Yisrael was to this tragic turn of events.